Hello guys, Linker here with two new heroes, Queen and Joker, who dropped on test a couple hours ago. They have a lot more to them that you get at first sight. So in this video, we're going to do three things. First, get you up to speed with their abilities, signature item, and furniture. Next, talk about synergies, counters, and how each of these work. And last, give a ranking to each of them based on what we currently know at this time. Like and subscribe to join us, and let's get to it. Alright, so there's going to be a quick summary later, skip ahead if you want to see that, but for the in-depth overview of their abilities, starting with Queen. She's a tanky might hero who uses strength gear. I want to start with her 3, the passive attack and defend. This increases her crit rating and her defense rating for every 10 seconds with no stacking limit. So that you can just kind of go on, stacked with other things very well. We'll talk about all of that in a second. All of her active abilities interact with Johanna, that's the motorcycle. The 4 deals 4 hits of 160% damage, and if it isn't interrupted, it knocks back and stuns enemies for 3 seconds. The 2 has the motorcycle deal 250%, a small damage in a medium-sized AoE, marking enemies. For 5 seconds, every time the marked enemy gets hit by 2 crits, they're stunned for 2 seconds. This can happen multiple times. Ultimate winds up with her on the motorcycle, creating this tornado, sucking enemies in a vortex, the size of Sophia's ult. This is dealing 670% max. She can't be hit during this animation, so kind of like Thane. Signature item has her get a shield, so she gets 35% of her max health every time she summons the motorcycle, and plus 30 gives her a meaningful 25% crit rating and 30 crit amp while the shield is out. As for her furniture, the 3 out of 9 allows her to heal herself and her allies for 40% of the damage she deals to controlled enemies. Think of it as group 40 life leech, but it scales off of her attack. The 9 out of 9 allows her to buff allies' attack rating by 30% for 3 seconds when she does this, but it doesn't stack. We'll get back to her in just a second. Next is Joker. Stat-wise, he's pretty balanced, being a celerity hero who uses agility gear. Let's start with his passive. What this does is it conditionally deals big damage to all enemies, scaling up to 340%, that's 1700% total to all enemies at max. It has a few conditions though. First, you need 3 or more enemies you see at the same time. There's not a lot of heroes that do this, we'll talk about those that do in a second, and at least 1 more ally alive. Second, this can only trigger up to 3 times per battle and once every 7 seconds. This grants him energy, meaning he'll ult soon after this is used, getting bonuses we'll talk about soon. Next is Joker's 2. It's a marker, starting with the enemy directly opposite of Joker, so you can target this, moving on to the highest combat rating every time the marked target is killed. What that marker does is it turns Joker into a faction that has the advantage over the marked enemy. So if the enemy is a wielder, Joker will become a mauler while this mark is up. Whenever he deals damage to any enemy that he has faction advantage against, not just the target, 2 things are gonna happen. First, he's gonna trip them to the ground for 3 seconds, and then they also get debuffed, taking 30% extra damage for 5 seconds, stacking with the factional advantage he gets. So this multiplies in quite a nice way. These effects can happen once every 7 seconds on every enemy, so no complete 1v1 lockdown from this guy just tripping somebody over and over, but nonetheless very good stuns and CC from him. The enemy's factional advantage are also reduced, and the 3 allows him to attack his marked target from distance every 3 normal attacks he does, dealing 200% damage. This is going to allow him to, from distance, apply this knockdown, so even if he's not going for this target directly, like let's say it's in the backline, something big is blocking it, he's still going to CC it every so often. Let's say the ultimate, it deals 300% damage to all enemies, so slightly less than the passive. It has an extra effect we'll talk about in a second in the signature item. So the signature item is going to buff him after he uses the ultimate, giving him 20% additional damage and 35 attack speed. This is not haste, so no cooldown reduction, although it doesn't really matter in this guy anyways. Like haste is basically him attacking faster because everything else is just kind of timed, and the furniture is around CC immunity. So each non-CC'd ally gives them a chance to break free of CC and gain complete immunity, with Quinn giving a slightly higher extra bonus, and the 9 out of 9 also gives him a 40% shield when he escapes the CC. Now before we move on, let's quickly summarize what those heroes are about. For Queen, the passive makes her more beefy and crit more as the fight goes on, so she enjoys this going for a longer range. Active summons her by giving her a shield, crit rating, and crit amp. Ult is a Thane ult, dealing damage, sucking enemies in. and then she has a wind-up knockback stun AoE, and an instant debuff making enemies get stunned if they get critted. The furniture makes her heal herself and allies when she hits controlled enemies. As for Joker, he's near CC immune damage-oriented hero. His passive deals meaningful damage whenever 3 or more enemies are controlled. The ultimate deals damage to all enemies, and the rest of his kit is about gaining factional advantage to the enemy opposing him, moving to the next highest combat rating next, allowing him to trip and debuff enemies weak to him, making them take extra damage. Moving on to counters and synergies, these are both very CC-oriented heroes. I'm sure they'll be pretty good with the likes of Tassie, Mihira, and Gwyneth. They'll also both dimensionals benefiting from Albedo's buff, especially Queen, whose buff stacks it cumulatively. She needs her passive to tick a few times for her to be able to tank, while her ultimate helps with that. The ultimate also means her allies need to be able to take aggression. An interesting comp that does that would be Orthos Flora Stall. It ticks both boxes on allies that can take hits, and the crits from Flora might work with her, so she'll be tricky hero to fit in, but if you do manage to fit her in, she will pay back with stuns, healing, and tanking. As for Joker, he loves running into CC. Don't let his trips mislead you. Except certain win sets enabling your once you stand the backline, his main place in campaign is as a solo carry or maybe duo carry. You like him most against factional heroes, as Celis Hypos will get an advantage against him as well, but more than most, avoid this guy just wasting an ability into dimensional. I don't think he's going to counter campaign Tassie like someone like Wukong does, but he could definitely pull off rushes on the likes of Belinda, Solis, and their likes. He might fit into certain Ainz Albedo sets, but the main place where I see him fit is those campaign stages where Tassie is free, alongside allies like Athalia, Saurus, Gorvo, Khazard, and their likes. Another possible set for him would be the separate Ezio set, where he's in charge of bringing enemies down to the range and taking care of annoying mages that would otherwise stop Ezio from spiraling his dodge and carrying. Lastly, Queen and Joker, of course, synergize very well. So for their ranking, starting with the signature item, Queen is super relevant. Even the +1, the +30 boost lets her buff ally Shadow Warriors wouldn't. I don't think this is an easy buff to utilize, so it's probably not threatening the likes of Rose in usage, but it might let her find placement in some spicy Dark Demore TR sets. However, the +1 is relevant, the +30 is interesting if you plan to use the hero. Between them, there isn't that much to prioritize. Joker's signature item will enable him to carry, while the +30 isn't absolutely necessary, I don't think, because we'll be ulting a whole bunch. The bonus from the +20 is huge. This isn't Nakaruru case where the attack speed is only for the occasional stun. This guy's gonna carry. He's gonna do AoE damage with that thing. And since he gains energy on his passive, he's going to go town with this. Really enjoy this extra scaling. Queen's furniture is pretty important. It'll allow her to sustain her allies much better than she would otherwise, and if you take her +9 and you have a +30, she's going to be an inconsistent but meaningful buffer for your team. And Joker's +3 is also going to be very important. Perhaps the most important part for his kit. It's what gives him the CC immunity he deserves. +9 gives him an auxiliary shield and more chances on top of that, but it's a luxury more than anything. If he works on a set, it'll probably work in the +3. And now, for the part you've all been waiting for, hero rankings. I'll probably make a tier list update with these guys once we know more, but I anticipate Joker will get the edge for being much easier to use. Another thing to mention for rankings, these guys don't hold a candle to Ainz and Albedo. As I've predicted early on this channel, Ainz and Albedo are mainstream endgame sets, just one of the strongest there is, one of the most prominent endgame KT sets, if not the absolute best, fighting with the God comp. However, Joker and Queen are absolutely powerful and not to be underestimated. I predict they'll see mainstream use fit into the lower end of the meta. Think Nakaruru, Ezio kind of. Very strong, but not in the top 3 teams. I have some people like Riptide that say Queen is better, but my advice is you should exchange for a Joker. He's just easier to use. And that's it for now. Like and subscribe, let me know what you think below, and I've been Linker. Peace.